Good morning to one present here. I, Dr. Pooja Agarwal, along with my colleague, Mrs. Pratishtha Mishra, welcome you all for a thought-enlightening webinar on space law. Space technology is becoming an important component of India's economy and virtually touching every person's life. So we thought it would be a very educational experience for all our listeners to gain knowledge about this new and emerging field. Although the field is new and emerging, but the speaker for today is also an emerging star of the space law, and his knowledge of the space law is incomparable to others in the field. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our young and dynamic speaker, Mr. Adithya A. Variath. He is currently working at Maharashtra National Law University and is also a coordinator at the Center for Research in Air and Space Law, MNLU. He is pursuing his doctoral thesis on this topic related to space law, which is arms race and militarization of outer space, war lawfare, and de-weaponization of space. Apart from this academic engagement, he is also working as a member for legal research at International Legal Center for Space Sustainability, Paris, France. Before this, he has been a member of Center for AI and Digital Policy, Washington, US. He has more than 35 publications in his name in the form of various books, chapters, articles, and research papers. But the list is so long that if I take the name of the entire publication, then our entire time will go in that. Currently, he is working on his upcoming book to be published by Oxford University Press titled Decoding International Space Law in the 21st Century. He has more accomplishments in his name, but I feel it is more important to learn from him rather than to learn about him. So, without wasting or losing any more minutes, I request our HOD sir, Dr. Neeraj Prakash Rai, to welcome our guest for the day. Over to you, sir. Sir, your mic is off. Please switch on your mic.
Okay, sorry. I would take this opportunity to welcome our speaker, Adithya A, Coordinator, Center for Research in Air and Space Law, Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, Maharashtra. I would also take to welcome Professor KRS Sambasivra, Vice Chancellor, Mangalayatan University, Jabalpur. Professor Vinita Kaur Saluja, Pro Vice Chancellor, and Dr. S. Nagakishore Bhavanam, Registrar, Mangalayatan University, Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh. And a warm welcome to all the guests and participants in this event of current relevance, Introduction to Space Law. So this is a very important topic for this webinar. So I request the guest for the day to kindly address the webinar. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Am I audible?
Okay, of course, sir.
Yes. Thank you, Neeraj, sir, for your very kind remarks.
Thank you. Welcome.
And thank you, Pooja ma'am, and thank you, Pratishtha. So it's a great honor to be speaking on this topic, especially at Mangalayatan University, because I also have a connection with Jabalpur, and I was actually Pratishtha's junior. So it's like coming back home and speaking to a set of students who are studying in Jabalpur. I thank the institution and all the organizers for thinking of me, and especially inviting me to speak on space law, because it is such a domain that even though it is so emerging, not all law schools venture into talking about space law. So I credit the organizers and kudos to the administration for thinking of this topic. I hope this becomes an annual exercise, and maybe Mangalayatan can also start something on space law very soon. With this, I would like to start the presentation, and I'm just sharing my screen. Yeah, can somebody just tell me if it is visible?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Pratishtha. Okay, so I was actually planning that I'll speak for around 40 to 45 minutes, and I'll keep the remaining 10 minutes for questions if there are any. So, as Pooja ma'am and Neeraj sir mentioned, I am here to speak about space law. Okay, and you might have seen that in the introduction, they were mentioning that I had the Center for Research in Air and Space Laws. Okay. So let us just start with clearing this very fundamental. You actually see that air and space law are often read together. Okay, and in law schools, you actually teach this subject simultaneously. Okay, but it is very important to understand that air and space law are completely two different fields. Okay, it is just like reading criminal law and insolvency and bankruptcy code, two completely different subject having two completely different domains, having two different principles, two different set of laws. The only similarity is that air and space are actually neighbors. Okay. Otherwise, both these fields are completely different, and you actually see the fundamental difference in both these fields comes from the basic principle. Okay, so if you actually, when I say about space law is derived from the principle of freedom. Okay, it means space is something that is open for all the states to go and explore. And air law or aviation law, as we talk about, comes from the principle of sovereignty. Okay, it means airspace is the sovereign space of the land or of the state. Okay, so in a purely technical sense, sovereignty of a state lies in the land, its territorial waters, and the air above it. Okay. So you actually see that one domain is built on the principle of air on freedom, and other domain is built on the principle of sovereignty. Okay. With this, we will begin our session on space law. It means I'm going to talk about freedom. Okay. Now, when I was pondering over this fact that even though space law is such an important field, हम क्या करते हैं कि we don't actually understand और हम ये सोच नहीं पाते कि space law का practical relevance क्या है. Okay, and this is what is the beauty of space law. Okay, so you actually see एक वक्त था करीब 10-15 years पहले when IPR was a trend and everybody was doing IPR. Okay, and the people who started doing IPR 15 to 20 years back, वो आज वो expertise का जो benefits है वो reap कर रहे हैं. Okay, and this is the same with aviation and space laws. आज एक ऐसा समय है जहाँ पर आप you can actually delve into learning space law and aviation law, और मैं आपको गारंटी दे सकता हूँ कि आने वाले कुछ 10 से 15 सालों में आप ये डोमेन का जो है बेनिफिट रीप करोगे. ओके, एंड स्पेस लॉ इज सो इम्पोर्टेंट क्योंकि आप देख रहे थे कि कुछ ही महीनों पहले हमने चंद्रयान लॉन्च किया. उसके बाद हम ये देख रहे हैं कि हाउ इंडिया इज बिकमिंग वन ऑफ द मोस्ट strong nations when it comes to space exploration. And when we are marching towards exploring space, आप देखोगे कि जैसे ही हम न्यू challenges को डील करेंगे, that is also a time where there will be more and more conflicts. Okay, with broadening of this domain, और जैसे इंडिया ये डोमेन में घुस रहा है, you actually see that हमारे सामने बहुत सारे challenges भी है. Okay, and when there are challenges, there are problems, and when there are problems, there are lawyers to actually solve the problems. Okay, and this is why it is important that when we study law, you also have to explore these domains जहाँ पर बहुत सारे लोग नहीं delve करते. Okay, and this is one of the prime reasons why I wanted to talk to you, all of you, about the importance of space law, not only from the perspective of ये किताबी चीजें है या फिर ये अनरियल सा है, but also to tell all of you that space law का एक बहुत emerging sector है जहाँ पर आप practice कर सकते हो. And this is happening because there are a lot of new issues. बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो space में हो रहा है जो which lawyers actually don't know. Okay, so to start off my presentation, I'll show you this slide. Okay, and these are actually posters of 3 interesting movies. I think इसमें से कुछ movies तो आप सबने देखा ही होगा. Star Wars आप सबने देखा होगा. Okay, it's very famous. ये आया था, the movie, the first part actually came in the 1980s, 1987, 86 के करीब. Then there was a very interesting movie called as Gravity. और उसके साथ साथ एक दूसरा एक मूवी है called as Martian. और आप देखो कि जब भी ये मूवीज आए थे, फॉर एग्जांपल स्टार वॉर्स जो 1980 में आया था, या फिर ग्रेविटी या फिर मार्शियन जो कुछ सालों पहले आए थे, व्हेन द मूवी रिलीज्ड ये सब अनरियल लग रहा था. व्हेन स्टार वॉर्स केम इन 1980s, nobody thought that there can be a potential war that can happen in the outer space. Okay, when Martian was released, nobody thought actually that people will actually go to Mars and try to set up a house there. Okay, or when Gravity released, nobody actually thought that there could be astronauts that can just wander over outer space. But मैं आपको ये कह दूं कि ये जो भी चीज जो हम मूवीज में देख रहे थे, आज के समय में ये सब एक रियलिटी है. Okay, now we are thinking of setting up bases in Mars. आपने देखा होगा there are people like Elon Musk जो कहते हैं कि humans को हम interplanetary species बनाएंगे. It means humans will not only live in Earth, but there is a possibility that humans will also live in other planets. Okay, this is Star Wars में दिखाया गया था that there could be fighting or spaceships. जो war जो outer space में होगा, वो आज के जमाने में एक reality बन रहा है, wherein you are actually seeing that states are trying to put weapons in the outer space. Okay, इसका एक बहुत recent example है wherein Russia is planning to do a nuclear testing in outer space. Okay, so ये बहुत ही रोमांचक चीज है जो अगर आप सोचोगे कि one country trying to invest its resources to weaponize space, तो इसका मतलब ये है कि जो ट्रेडिशनल आइडिया था हमारा that a war can be fought on the land, in the sea or on the air, अब ये हो सकता है कि war can also be fought in the outer space. And all of these things which were cinematic uh, are now becoming reality. And when all of these things are becoming reality, you think about one thing, that is law. Do we have a law to regulate all of these things? Or if not, what happens when a conflict comes out? Okay, and this is what space law is all about. Space law is trying to actually solve many of these things. Okay, and why is space law so important for lawyers? ये important इसलिए है क्योंकि ये जो space sector है, जिसको हम space economy कहते हैं, the value of space economy today is around $400 billion. So this was actually a data which was given out by a very famous institution, जिसने ये कहा था कि in the year of 2021, the value of space was $370 billion, and 2024 में we are actually touching around $400 billion. अब ये वैल्यू एक्चुअली है क्या जिसका मैं कह रहा हूँ कि $400 billion है या फिर $350 billion है? This is the value or the economic incentive that you get when you explore outer space. अब exploration of outer space है क्या? स्पेस में ऐसे बहुत सारी चीजें होती है जो हमें पता नहीं है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हमें ये लगता है कि वी आर सेंडिंग सैटेलाइट्स so that we can get maybe broadcasting, we can do broadcasting. But space is not limited to broadcasting. आप देखते हो कि स्पेस बस ये नहीं कि आपने सैटेलाइट्स भेज दिया और वहां से सिग्नल आ रहा है और आपका टीवी चल रहा है, या फिर आपने सैटेलाइट भेज दिया और वहां से सिग्नल आ रहा है और आपका फोन चल रहा है. स्पेस में ऐसे बहुत सारे सेक्टर्स है which actually holds a lot of economic value. For example, there is medicinal research that is going in outer space. Okay, so there is a discovery of a lot of medicines. तो आप अगर नासा या फिर कोई इंटरनेशनल स्पेस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की वेबसाइट में जाओगे, you will actually see that a lot of pharmaceutical companies have invested a lot of resources in outer space, क्योंकि उनको ये लग रहा है कि कुछ मेडिसिन है, कुछ केमिकल रिएक्शंस है, अगर आप वो जीरो ग्रेविटी और ये नियर टू ग्रेविटी फ्लक्चुएशंस में अगर आप टेस्ट करोगे, then that can produce better results. So some incurable diseases like Alzheimer's, like AIDS, like a lot of cancer, medicines of a lot of these diseases are being invented in the outer space. Okay, तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि a satellite is going up and satellite is merely sending you signals. There are things other than satellites. There are space stations. जैसे आपने स्टार वॉर्स मूवी में देखा होगा, there's a spaceship जहाँ पर बहुत सारे लोग रहते हैं अंदर. There is also something similar to that. It is called as the International Space Station, जिसके अंदर रिसर्च होती है, where there is medicinal research happening in outer space. इसके अलावा there is telemedicine. Space actually plays a very critical role in climate change. आपने देखा होगा कि in terms of climate change, one of the most difficult task in mitigation of climate change is data. Okay, actually climate change को predict करना बहुत मुश्किल है. Okay, so space is actually working towards developing more data that can be used to predict climate change. For example, there are satellites that monitor melting of glaciers. Okay. हम सबने ये सुना है कि glaciers are melting, there is rise in sea level. Now, one of the fundamental things to mitigate this is to ensure कि हम glaciers को track करें. Okay, so there are satellites who are engaged in mitigation of climate change. For example, there is a problem of forest fires. There are satellites who track forest fires. So climate change में बहुत बड़ा हाथ है outer space technologies का. You actually see that जब मैंने medicines के बारे में बात किया या फिर मैंने कुछ innovation के बारे में बात किया, you actually see that there is a lot of potential of intellectual property rights in outer space. Okay, कि अगर आपने कुछ invent कर दिया outer space में, who will get the patent of this innovation? Okay, so जिन्होंने IP पढ़ा होगा उनको ये याद होगा that when I'm talking about a patent is a territorial right. You know, we don't have something called as an international patent law. तो हर patent जो है वो state का होता है. Okay, now in this context you actually see कि when something is being developed in the outer space, इसका मतलब है कि when an innovation is happening in a no man's land. Okay, तो अगर no man's land में किसी ने कुछ innovation बनाया, किसके पास जाएगा उसका patent? Okay, so there are a lot of patent problems. There are a lot of problems with regard to arms, okay, weapons in outer space. और ये जो मैंने कहा innovation, patentability, wars, potential of telemedicine, climate change, इस सब का जो economic value जो है, इसको हम कहते हैं space economy. और ये space economy का जो value associated है आज के ज़माने में, and that is around more than $400 billion. Okay, and there is a possibility that by 2050, space will become a $1 trillion economy. Okay, $1 trillion economy. Okay, so आप समझ रहे हो कि इतना बड़ा एक value sector है जो चल रहा है. There are a lot of legal issues associated with this. Okay, and all of these legal issues that I'm talking about demand lawyers to come and solve a lot of these problems. Okay, and this is where I actually want जो भी students को ये space ये सब fascinating लगता है कि to try and explore what you can do in the sector. Okay, now to just give you a brief understanding about what the subject is, you will actually see ये जो space law जो है, this is a very new subject. Okay, as compared to other subjects of law, space law is a very new subject. ये जो subject का जो development है, this actually started in 1957. Okay, मतलब करीब 70 years पहले ये subject develop हुआ है actually. Okay, and अगर आपने ये image देखा होगा मेरे slide में, you actually see that there is one person जो कुछ goal से एक चीज को कुछ tight कर रहा है. Okay. And the thing that he is actually tightening was the first satellite that was sent to the outer space. Okay, और इसका नाम है Sputnik. ये Sputnik आप नाम अगर आपको याद होगा, this was also the name of the vaccine that Russia developed to fight against COVID. Okay, and Russia actually named their vaccine Sputnik on the first satellite that they sent. Okay, तो आप देखते हो कि this is the year of 1957, wherein वो time पे USSR ने अपना first satellite भेजा था to the outer space. Okay, so if you actually read about world history, तो आप देखते हो कि 1945 वर्ल्ड के लिए एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट समय है, बिकॉज 1945 वाज द ईयर व्हेन वर्ल्ड वॉर टू एंडेड। ओके, और जैसे ही वर्ल्ड वॉर टू खत्म हो गया था, सारे स्टेट्स ने मिलकर ये सोचा कि वी विल सेट अप एन इंस्टीट्यूशन कॉल्ड एस यूएन, यूनाइटेड नेशंस। ओके, एंड 1940s, 1950s और 1960s वेर अ पीरियड जब हमें लग रहा था कि यूएन हैज द कैपेसिटी टू सॉल्व इश्यूज। ओके, और 1950s में जो होप हमारा था यूएन पे, वो होप अभी नहीं है हमारे पास। ओके, at that point of time UN was an effective body. Okay, so we are talking about a period जहां पर people had a trust in this body called as UN, और UN ने क्या किया था, इंटरनेशनल लॉ मेकिंग को थोड़ा स्ट्रक्चरलाइज कर दिया था। ओके, सो कमिंग टू दिस टॉपिक, 1957 में यूएसएसआर ने अपना फर्स्ट सैटेलाइट भेजा टू द आउटर स्पेस, और जैसे ही वर्ल्ड वॉर टू खत्म हो गया था और यूएन एस्टैब्लिश हो गया था, एक न्यू फॉर्म ऑफ वॉर चालू हुआ था जिसको हम कहते हैं कोल्ड वॉर। ओके, सो देयर इज हार्ड वॉर एंड देयर इज कोल्ड वॉर। और हार्ड वॉर का मतलब ये है कि जैसे वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 एंड 2 वेर हार्ड वॉर्स, वेर इन वेपन्स वेर यूज्ड, देयर वाज अ डायरेक्ट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट। और कोल्ड वॉर का मतलब ये है कि देयर इज नो एक्चुअल वॉर हैपनिंग, बट देयर आर सम थिंग्स हैपनिंग जो वॉर के जैसा ही है। देयर इज कॉम्पिटिशन, देयर इज wars fought at different places, but no two countries are fighting against each other directly. Okay. और ये कोल्ड वॉर एरा चल रहा था जहां पर एक साइड में था यूएस और दूसरे साइड में था यूएसएसआर। तो इवन दो दे वर नॉट फाइटिंग अगेंस्ट ईच अदर डायरेक्टली, उनके आपस में बहुत सारे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स थे और वो अलग अलग तरीके से वो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स निकाल रहे थे। ओके, सो दैट वाज अ वेरी टॉक्सिक रिलेशनशिप दैट यूएसएसआर एंड यूएसए हैड एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम। तो वो समय पे यूएसएसआर ने अपना फर्स्ट सैटेलाइट भेज दिया आउटर स्पेस में, और जैसे यूएसएसआर ने अपना पहला सैटेलाइट भेजा इन 1957, यूएस यूएस के पैरों के नीचे से उसका धरती ही निकल हिल गया। उसने सोचा कि ऐसे कैसे हो गया हमारे सामने सामने। ओके, यूएसए नेवर थॉट दैट यूएसएसआर वुड सेंड अ सैटेलाइट टू आउटर स्पेस। ओके, और जैसे यूएसएसआर ने अकम्प्लिश कर दिया टास्क, यूएस ने सोचा कि वी विल हैव टू आउटरन देम। ओके, तो ये कोल्ड वॉर एरा के बीच में ये जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ यूएसएसआर और यूएस के बीच में, इसको हम कहते हैं स्पेस रेस। ओके, स्पेस रेस, a race between USA and USSR on who will be the first state जो स्पेस को एक्सप्लोर करेगा। ओके, तो पहला सैटेलाइट यूएस ने भेजा, उसके बाद बहुत सारे सैटेलाइट्स यूएसएसआर ने भेजा, और फिर यूएस ने भेजा, एंड देयर वर कंटिन्यूअस सेंडिंग ऑफ सैटेलाइट्स इन द आउटर स्पेस। बट ये जो स्पेस रेस जो है, दिस रेस फाइनली एंडेड विद दिस इवेंट। ओके, ये इवेंट आप सबने देखा होगा कहीं ना कहीं और सुना होगा इस इवेंट के बारे में, एंड दिस इज कॉल्ड एज द मून लैंडिंग इन दी बाय द यूएस। ओके, तो आप अगर आप सोचोगे ये पूरे पिक्चर के बारे में, 1957 में पहला सैटेलाइट जाता है बाहर। ओके, और 1969 में, okay, within 12 to 13 years of the first satellite that was sent by USSR, within 13 years there was a US astronaut on the moon. Okay, and moon landing में ये जो स्पेस रेस जो मैं कह रहा था, ये डिबेट को टोटली खत्म कर दिया, and this established USA as one of the most powerful spacefaring nations. Okay, अब आप सोचिएगा ये हो रहा है 1957 से लेके 1969 तक, और मैंने ये भी कहा ना कि दिस वाज अ पोस्ट यूनाइटेड नेशंस एरा। ओके, तो 1945 के बाद यूनाइटेड नेशंस तो आ गया था, उसके साथ ही साथ a lot of states were getting independence क्योंकि decolonization हो रहा था वो समय पे। Okay, for example, one of the countries that got independence after formation of UN was India. Okay, 1947 में हम आजाद हुए। ठीक है, उसके साथ ही साथ आप देखते हो कि that from 1945 to 1960s more than 70 to 80 new states were formed. Okay, तो आप देखते हो कि ये जब यूएसएसआर और यूएस स्पेस एक्सप्लोर कर रहा था, वो टाइम पे बहुत सारे स्टेट्स थे जो इंडिपेंडेंट हो गए थे। ओके, और ये जो फ्रेशली इंडिपेंडेंट स्टेट्स थे जैसे इंडिया, जैसे पाकिस्तान, जैसे साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में बहुत सारे स्टेट्स, अफ्रीकन स्टेट्स, और ये स्टेट्स देख रहे थे कि देर आर टू सुपर पावर्स जो स्पेस को कंट्रोल कर रहा है। ओके, और उनको ये लग रहा था कि अगर ये दोनों स्टेट्स अगर स्पेस को कंट्रोल करे तो क्या ये लोग ओनरशिप ले लेंगे स्पेस का। ओके, एंड देयर वाज अ कॉमन फियर इन ऑल द अफ्रीकन एंड द एशियन स्टेट्स दैट यूएसए एंड यूएसएसआर वुड नाउ कंट्रोल द आउटर स्पेस। ओके, तो आप सोचिएगा वो समय पे डर क्या है। जैसे भारत जैसा एक ऐसा देश है जो विच इज अनेबल टू मीट इट्स वेरी बेसिक डिमांड्स, कि हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम्स है, पॉवर्टी प्रॉब्लम्स है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट प्रॉब्लम्स है, हमारे पास वेपन्स नहीं है, हमारे पास में नेबर्स है। When we are struggling with our own problems, we were seeing two states fighting against each other to control the outer space. Okay, और ये जो डर था ये सब स्टेट्स का, वो समय पे ये सारे स्टेट्स मिलकर ये इशू को यूनाइटेड नेशंस ले गए। ओके, और मैंने कहा ना कि एक ऐसा वक्त है जहां पर यूनाइटेड नेशंस काम करता था ठीक से। ओके, so at that point of time United Nations actually took cognizance of the issue. Okay, and United Nations took cognizance of the issue, and यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने कुछ कानून बनाए इस पे। ओके, एंड दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज स्पेस लॉ। ओके, एंड इफ यू कैन सी द स्लाइड, यू विल एक्चुअली सी देयर इज अ थिंग कॉल्ड एज द 5 यूनाइटेड नेशन ट्रीटीज। ओके, तो मैंने ये कहा ना कि जब ये सारे स्टेट्स अपना डर लेके यूएन चले गए, यूएन ने इशू को रेगुलेट करने के लिए अपना सबसे पहला एक कानून बनाया जिसका नाम है द आउटर स्पेस ट्रीटी ऑफ 1967। ओके, so you actually see that after 1967, there are 4 more treaties that the United Nations made. Okay, the Rescue Agreement of 1968. Okay, this is the rescue of astronauts. Okay, there was a liability convention. Okay, क्या पता किसी ने कुछ launch कर दिया और कोई और देश में गिर गया. Okay, so this talks about the liability convention. Okay, फिर उसके बाद और एक कानून आया जिसका नाम है Registration Convention. Okay, so this was regarding the registration of the satellites that you are sending in the outer space, and then came the Moon Treaty. Okay, so आप देखते हो कि एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग बात इसमें क्या है कि दैट जो यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने ट्रीटीज बनाया 1980s के बाद, यूनाइटेड नेशंस नेवर ड्राफ्टेड अ ट्रीटी टू रेगुलेट आउटर स्पेस। ओके, इसका मतलब ये है कि 1967 से लेके 1980 तक की एक फेज था, करीब 13-14 इयर्स, जब यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने स्पेस को रेगुलेट किया। 1980 के बाद यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने कोई भी ट्रीटी नहीं बनाया है अब तक। ओके, जबकि आप देखते हो कि 1980 के बाद ही असली डेवलपमेंट चालू हुआ स्पेस में। ओके, सो यू एक्चुअली सी दैट द डेवलपमेंट स्टार्टेड इन आउटर स्पेस, और जब रियलिटी में डेवलपमेंट होने लग गया, यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने बोल दिया कि अब हम लॉ नहीं बना पाएंगे। अब यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने ऐसा क्यों बोला? बिकॉज नन ऑफ द स्टेट्स वांटेड यूएन टू रेगुलेट आउटर स्पेस। यूएस, यूएसएसआर ये सब चाहते ही नहीं थे कि यूएन ये स्पेस ऐसा डोमेन को रेगुलेट करे। ओके, so this is the gray area in outer space, that there are a lot of things happening in outer space, but we don't have legislations regulating outer space today. Okay, the last legislation that we are talking about that UN has drafted was in the 1980s. मतलब समझ पा रहे हो कि 1980 से लेकर अब तक यूएन ने ये इशू पे कुछ किया ही नहीं है फंडामेंटली। ओके, अब दिस इशू दैट नाउ आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट becomes more interesting with the involvement of private sector. Okay, अब अगर देखोगे, space is now not a domain that is controlled only by states. Okay, अपने हम तो क्या है कि हम इंडिया में ये देखते हैं कि we have something called as ISRO, जो अपना satellites भेजता है बाहर, and it becomes a national event. But you actually see that space exploration in a lot of countries is not something that is only done by the government. Okay, we have a lot of private sectors who do exploration in outer space. For example, US में there is an organization called as SpaceX, which is run by Elon Musk. Or you have the Virgin Galactic, who is run by the founder of Virgin Mobiles. You have Amazon co-founder who runs something called as Blue Origin. These are private agencies who are exploring space. Okay, अगर आप देखोगे, private agencies are always more efficient than the state. Okay, private agencies are more efficient than the state. Okay, that is the reason why we like going to the airports and not the railway stations, because railway stations are managed by the state. It is not on time, it is ineffective, it is not clean, as opposed to airports, which is managed by a private agency. So you actually see that private agencies exploration outer space are more efficient. उनका काम बहुत interesting है. और आप देखते हो कि with the involvement of private sector, it is more and more opportunities for lawyers like us to go and help these private actors. And ये जो involvement है private sector का, it is now not limited to United States. Okay, बहुत ही interesting है इस बात को समझने के लिए that पिछले साल से इंडिया ने भी परमिशन दिया है प्राइवेट एजेंसीज को टू वर्क ऑन एक्सप्लोरेशन ऑफ आउटर स्पेस. इसका मतलब ये है कि दैट इन द कमिंग 10-15 years there could be another SpaceX coming from India. Okay, and this is opening up a lot of avenues for us as lawyers to actually explore this, enter this domain, so that we can serve the needs of the future companies in India. Okay, मैं चाहूंगा कि आप इस बारे में सोचिएगा कैसे आप एक स्पेस ऐसे एरिया पे अपना प्रैक्टिस को डाइवर्ट कर पाओ. ओके, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के इश्यूज है, आईपी के इश्यूज है, लाइसेंसिंग के इश्यूज है, फाइनेंसिंग के इश्यूज है. आप सोचिएगा कि कैसे इसमें आप एज अ लॉयर कैन हेल्प. ओके, नाउ इफ यू एक्चुअली सी, ये जो मैं कानून कह रहा था आउटर स्पेस ट्रीटी वगैरह, इट इज एक्चुअली बेस्ड ऑन अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग. ओके, अब आप सोचेगा, you might have seen this on Instagram or on various platforms, that कोई है जो मून पे जमीन खरीद रहा है. Okay, you might have seen that you can actually buy land on moon. There are people who buy stars on their names. किसी ने कोई स्टार को अपने नाम कर दिया. Okay, you might have seen all of these things. I'm very much sure कि कोई स्टार खरीद रहा है अपने नाम पे, कोई मून पे जमीन खरीद रहा है. Somebody is buying planet. Okay, now think about this. Is this legal? Okay, and if you actually see, all of these things happen because of a loophole that exists. Okay, and the loophole is Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty. Okay, so आप देखिएगा, this is Article 2 of Outer Space Treaty, and it says, and I'm reading it to all of you, and you can also read it simultaneously. It says, outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. Okay, तो आर्टिकल 2 एक चीज बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग ये कहता है कि नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू नेशनल अप्रोप्रिएशन बाय क्लेम ऑफ सोवरेनिटी. इसका मतलब ये है कि ये जो स्टेट से जिनका डर था कि यूएस और यूएसएसआर स्पेस पे कब्जा करेंगे, ये तो नहीं हो सकता, बिकॉज आउटर स्पेस ट्रीटी एक्सप्लिसिटली सेज you can't claim sovereignty in the outer space. Okay, but बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो इस चीज को मिस इंटरप्रेट करते हैं, and they say that what is Article 2 saying? Not subject to national appropriation. It means there can be individual appropriation. इसका मतलब है कि स्टेट नहीं एक्वायर कर सकता, बट इंसान एक्वायर कर सकता है एज एन इंडिविजुअल. ओके, सो दिस इज द लूपहोल दैट पीपल आर्ग्यू. बट प्रॉपर्टी लॉ ये कहता है कि हाउ कैन देयर बी इंडिविजुअल अप्रोप्रिएशन व्हेन द स्टेट इटसेल्फ कांट एक्वायर इट. ओके, बट बहुत सारे जन इसको एक लूपहोल कंसीडर करके मून पे, स्टार्स पे सब जमीन खरीदते हैं. ओके, सो दिस इज आल्सो समथिंग वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. ओके, और अब सोचेगा, there is something more interesting, that is Article 3 of Outer Space Treaty. Okay, बस थोड़ा सा टेक्स्ट हैवी है, मैं चाहूंगा कि आप ये थोड़ा सा पढ़िएगा, इसके आगे कुछ नहीं है पढ़ने. And Article 3 says that state parties to this treaty shall explore the outer space in the interest of maintaining international peace and security and for promoting cooperation and understanding. Okay, तो एक फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल स्पेस लॉ का क्या है कि अगर आप स्पेस एक्सप्लोर करोगे, you have to explore space for international peace and security and for promoting international cooperation. So this is the very genesis of space law. Okay, first, you can't claim sovereignty. Second, you can only do exploration of outer space for peace and security. Okay, now space is becoming a very, very evolving domain. Okay, if you can see my slide, you will actually see that there was a very interesting movie that released last year called as Don't Look Up. it's a very interesting movie. जिसने अगर नहीं देखा होगा, मैं चाहूंगा आप ये movie जाके देखिएगा. ये movie is actually a story of an asteroid. Okay. Or this is a fictional story wherein an asteroid is coming, and it is estimated that this asteroid will come and hit the Earth in the coming few years. Okay. And if you can see it, the movie says that it is based on truly possible events. Okay. So ये हो सकता है कि there could be an astronaut, and ये movie का plot ऐसा है कि एक astronaut आ रहा है, and this astronaut is coming and hitting the Earth. And कोई भी ये सोचा है कि अगर astronaut आ रहा है, we will have to fire a missile and destroy the astronaut so that Earth can be saved. But in this movie, ये story ऐसा है कि astronaut आता है और state ही decide करता है, rather than hitting the astronaut first, state को ये समझ आता है कि astronaut के अंदर बहुत सारा resources है. There was platinum, there was gold, there was a lot of minerals. और state ये सोचता है कि before we hit the asteroid, we should send satellites, we should send machinery जो जाके asteroid से ये minerals पहले निकाले. Okay, so the priority in this movie was given to extraction of minerals, extraction of resources. Okay, ये जो कहा था ये movie में, this is also based on a reality. Okay, and the reality is that जो हम meteoroids वगैरह का जो हम बात सुनते हैं, there are meteoroids, there are flying stars and all of these things. These meteoroids also hold a lot of value. Okay, और मैं क्यों कह रहा हूँ, because कुछ meteoroids ऐसे हैं जहाँ पर it is full of gold. Okay, there are meteoroids जो जिसमें सिर्फ platinum है. Okay, platinum हम सबको पता है it is one of the most expensive minerals. Okay, there are asteroids with full of platinum, there are asteroids with full of gold, there are asteroids with full of diamonds. Okay, and all of these things are floating in the outer space. Okay, and states actually plan to actually go and extract these resources from outer space. Okay, अब सोचो कि बहुत सारा unrealistic लगेगा ये सब चीजें, but all of these things are actually reality. Okay, and this is an example of extracting of resources from outer space, and this is called as asteroid mining. Okay, जैसे हमने सुना होगा जैसे land mining होता है to take out minerals like copper from the land, वैसे ही जैसे पेट्रोल का एक्सट्रैक्शन होता है, वैसे ही आउटर स्पेस में भी माइनिंग होता है. ओके, होता है मतलब देयर वुड बी मशीनरी दैट वुड बी डेवलप्ड दैट विल डू माइनिंग इन आउटर स्पेस, एंड दिस माइनिंग will be for different minerals. For example, platinum, gold, diamonds, water, fuel, a lot of these things. And there is enough proof to actually show us that ये चीजें हो सकती है. Okay, and this is what makes space a $1 trillion economy. Okay, now think about these things. What could be the legal problems? What can we do to actually solve a lot of these problems? Okay, or asteroid mining, आप देखोगे, this is actually done by private parties. Okay, there is SpaceX. There are a lot of private companies who actually want to do these mining activities. Okay, इसके साथ साथ आप देखिएगा, one of the most pressing issues today is the issue of space becoming, a very contested space domain for warfare. तो आप देखेंगे इसका बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग डेवलपमेंट है ये. ओके, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स स्पेस फोर्स. आप सोचना, जैसे हमारे पास आर्मी, नेवी और एयरफोर्स है, यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ने अपना एक डोमेन बना दिया कॉल्ड एज स्पेस फोर्स. Okay, like Army, Navy, and Air Force, they also have something called as Space Force. Okay, and they have made something called as Space Force because उनको ये लग रहा है कि फ्यूचर में जो वॉरफेयर होगा वो आउटर स्पेस में होगा. Okay, now this is not also isolated to US, because you actually see that there is European Union and there was NATO. Okay, जिसने कहा था कि we have declared space as an operational domain. It means even not just US, but a lot of European countries are also now thinking of war happening in the outer space. Okay, now think about all of these issues that I'm trying to say. Mining हो रहा है वहाँ पे, medicines develop हो रहा है वहाँ पे, warfare हो रहा है space में. There are so many legal issues. Okay, with regarding regulations, international law, accountability, compliance, and it becomes very difficult for all of us to actually understand these things and solve a lot of these things. Okay, and ये एक ऐसा डोमेन है जहाँ पर बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स का सॉल्यूशन ही नहीं निकला है. Okay, and when the world is facing a crisis, when we don't find solutions, lawyers have the responsibility to step in. Okay, and this is what lawyers like us have to do. We have to step in and try to bring solutions to a lot of these problems. Okay, इसके साथ साथ one of the most interesting challenges जो हम देख रहे हैं, this is called as the challenge with regard to ASAT weapons. It is called as the anti-satellite weapons. Okay, or this is also my PhD topic, wherein we are actually trying to regulate the ASAT weapons. Okay, just to give you an example of what is an ASAT weapon, these are weapons जो जमीन से हम फायर करते हैं. It is actually weapons that are fired from earth. Okay, ये जो रॉकेट है यहाँ से अर्थ से जाता है, and this has the capacity to strike a satellite in the outer space. That is the reason it is called as anti-satellite weapons. Okay, weapons fired from earth having capacity to shoot something in the outer space. Okay, think about this. Don't you think so? It is one of the most gravest concerns of today's times कि हम करोड़ों रुपए डाल के एक हमारा सैटेलाइट भेजता है चंद्रयान in outer space, and some random state has the capacity to fire a rocket and shoot down that satellite from Earth. Okay, अब सोचेगा, India has ASAT weapons. There are very few countries in the world, namely 4 to 5 countries, जिन्होंने अपना ASAT weapons को टेस्ट किया है, and India is one of them. Okay, China has an ASAT weapon, India has an ASAT weapon, US has an ASAT weapon. ये सारे सैटेलाइट, ये वेपन्स ऐसे हैं जो अर्थ से फायर किया जा सकता है, and it has the capacity to hit satellites in the outer space. There is also one more thing that can be developed, and that is a Uno reverse of this. Okay, that is satellites having the capacity to fire weapons from outer space, having the capacity to hit on ground. Okay, this is also being developed. Think about what could be the challenges. Okay, you firing a satellite, destroying somebody else's satellite firing at you. This is what happened in Space Wars. Okay, now becoming a reality. Okay, apart from all of these developments that I'm talking about, all of these developments also pollute. Okay, and this is the very common problem of space debris. Okay, wherein you actually see that ये जो भी satellites है जो हम बाहर भेजते हैं outer space में, all of these satellites have a lifespan. Okay, जैसे कोई भी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक डिवाइस आप देख लो, अगर ये मेरा फोन है, ये चलेगा शायद 5 साल. Okay, कोई आपका टीवी है, वो चलेगा शायद 7 साल. Okay, like all of our electronic products, satellites also have a lifespan. Okay, a satellite may function for maybe 20 years, 15 years, and after the satellite functions for so many years, it becomes a waste, it becomes a junk. Okay, और ये जो junk है, ये outer space में ऐसे ही revolve करता है. Okay, and what happens is that when all of these states are now sending our satellites, many a times these satellites collide. Okay, तो इसका outer space में crash हो जाता है, and it destroys and creates more space debris. Okay, और ये space debris का एक अपने आप में एक Ponzi scheme चलता है, wherein one space debris hitting other space debris, that is breaking into more space debris, and this is actually a big challenge today. जब space इतना polluted है because of space junk, many times हम जो नए satellites भेजते हैं, they get stuck because of space debris, and it creates more waste. Okay, so there is also a debate to make space more sustainable. इसके साथ ही साथ आपने देखा होगा बहुत सारे बार we actually see falling stars, shooting stars. Okay, it's a very common thing that you see a shooting star and you make a wish, है ना. हम सबने कहीं ना कहीं ये shooting star देखा होगा. Okay, अब आपको एक myth break कर दूं मैं. Many a times जो चीज को हम shooting star समझते हैं, these are actually space waste falling on earth. Okay, जो gravity के साथ साथ वो जल के नीचे आके गिर जाता है कहीं ना कहीं. Okay, so many a times जो चीज को हम shooting star समझते हैं, these are not actually shooting stars. Majority of the time these are space junk जो world में गिरता है, and we misconceive them as shooting stars. Okay, so If you think about this, we are actually literally praying to our waste when it is falling down to our earth. Okay, now this is actually an illustration of something that happened very recently. A space junk actually fell on the moon. Okay, and it created some damage in the moon surface. And it is expected ये जो हमने waste जो बाहर भेजा है space में, this also has the capacity to destroy and pollute other interplanetary bodies. Okay, so एक बहुत बड़ा concern हमारा ये है कि that the pollution that humans are creating, it is also causing damage in the outer space. Okay, and all of these things, if you actually compare, you actually see that India is also one of the biggest polluters when it comes to outer space innovation. But again, when I'm talking about all of these things, आप सोचिएगा कि I'm very much sure that not all of us have read space law. Okay, even I did not read space law when I was doing my LLB. Okay, but you actually see space law को आपको independently पढ़ने का जरूरत भी नहीं है. Okay, now think about this. What are the issues that I talk about? I talked about the issue of property. Okay, I talked about the issue of mining. I talked about the issue of IPR. I talked about the issue of war. I talked about the issue of medicine. Okay, all of these 5 things are something that you can associate with space law. Okay, so I am not asking you to read space law independently. If you are reading environmental law, read about the issue of space debris and sustainability in outer space along with environmental law. When you are reading property law, read about the right of property in outer space along with our normal property law. When you are reading contracts, read not only the contracts that talk about business, read also the contracts that can happen in the outer space. Okay, so we actually see space law को पढ़ने के लिए आपको space law independently पढ़ने का जरूरत नहीं है. If you are reading a contract, if you are reading an environmental law, if you are reading land laws, if you are reading IPR, try to associate those domains with space. Okay, and once you link these domains with outer space, you will actually see that you are entering into a domain जो आपको बहुत सारी चीजों में हेल्प करेगा. Okay, and I'm telling you that space research और space practice एक इतना lucrative field है. There are so many companies that pay amazing handsome salaries to people who work in this domain, and I wish some of you actually enter into this field because you actually see that ये field में इतने सारे avenues है that all of you can actually go and try to explore this. Okay, and with this I'll pause and I'll use the remaining time for taking up any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much for
Yes,
sharing your knowledge with us. Now the session is open for question and answers. The students may post their question in the chat box and I'll ask the questions to you.
Okay, so I can already see questions. Is it okay, ma'am, Pooja ma'am, if I read it
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
answer it so that it will
sure.
be easy for
Most
you?
welcome,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. So there is this question by Akansha, who said that can you provide an example of a real life world case where real world cases wherein space law has been applied or tested? Okay, very interesting question. So I'm sharing my slide, and अगर आप देखोगे, I'm sharing my slide, and if you see, can you see this image? And if you see this image, this is actually a issue of patent. Okay, this was one of the first cases of patent, and this issue was actually a case fought between SpaceX and Amazon. Okay, and the issue was regarding the designing of satellite. Okay, तो SpaceX ने अपना एक सैटेलाइट बना दिया था, रॉकेट लॉन्चर बना दिया था, और वैसे ही एक रॉकेट लॉन्चर Amazon ने भी बना दिया था, ब्लू ओरिजिन ने भी. And there was an issue with regard to who is the first owner of this design. Okay, so आप देखोगे कि space law as a domain में the cases are not limited to merely space law. The cases are actually space contracts with regarding to IP. For example, Akansha, there is a very interesting case regarding Devas Antrix. Okay, this is an investment law dispute that happened in India. Okay, this was actually a case regarding an issue of investment, bilateral investment treaty in India. तो आप देखते हो कि स्पेस का जो केसेस है, दिस इज नॉट लिमिटेड टू कोर स्पेस, these are ancillary cases. Okay, there are cases regarding to investment, cases regarding to IPR, cases regarding to environment. Okay, a lot of these contractual issues. Okay, Mustafa has asked the question: what are the main regulatory agencies and organizations responsible for space law and ensuring compliance and international space agreements? Okay, Mustafa, so you actually see we have something called as the international space law and we have something called as the national space law. Okay, इंटरनेशनल स्पेस लॉ का सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है यूएन. ओके, पर आप देखते हो कि यूएन क्या है कि यूएन एक्चुअली मेक्स सब एजेंसीज. ओके, फॉर एग्जांपल यू हैव यूएनएचसीआर, यूनाइटेड नेशंस हाई कमिश्नर फॉर रेफ्यूजीज, टू टॉक अबाउट रेफ्यूजी लॉ इश्यूज. वैसे ही स्पेस के लिए एक बहुत अच्छा ऑर्गन है जिसको हम कहते हैं कोपस. ओके, आई पुट इट ऑन द ग्रुप in the chat also. Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. So it is COPOUS. Okay, Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. This is the main committee. और ये committee ने एक organization establish किया है called as UNOSA, that is United Nations Outer Space Agency. Okay, so आप देखोगे कि international level पे these are the bodies that are responsible. In India, it is the Department of Space. Okay, which is set up by the government of India. Okay, next question is by Karthik, who has asked, how do international space treaties and agreements address the issue of satellites for intelligence gathering purpose? Okay, Karthik, if you actually see, don't you think so it is a problem of copyright? कि आपने कोई satellite भेजा है and the satellite is capturing images of what is happening in your country. It is a problem of national security. It is a problem of copyright. It is a problem of peaceful use. Okay, issue of spying. But interesting बात यह है कार्तिक कि we don't have legislation. Okay, मैंने कहा ना कि 1980s के बाद हमने कानून ही बनाना बंद कर दिया. Okay, because कोई चाहता ही नहीं था कानून बनाए. जिस वजह से ये जो इंटेलिजेंस गैदरिंग का जो पूरा इशू है, that is also a gray area. We actually don't have legislations to solve many of these things. Okay, so again you actually see that there is a loophole that you can actually explore उसके आगे. So Priyanshu has asked, sir, as you mentioned about ASAT in your lecture, I just wanted to know how do espionage activities in space impact diplomatic relation between countries and international communities? Okay, very interesting, Pranshu. Have you seen this movie called as Pokhran? Okay, wherein India was testing our first nuclear, testing a nuclear weapon. और अगर आपने मूवी देखा होगा, there was a satellite by US that was monitoring India's actions. Okay, तो आप इसको broadly सोचिए प्रांशु, हम राजस्थान में क्या करें, इसका क्या लेना देना है यूएस से. ओके, बट यू एक्चुअली सी, मैंने कहा ना, दिस डोमेन इज सो अनरेगुलेटेड कि ये जो एस्पिनाज एक्टिविटी, स्पाइंग बाय सैटेलाइट्स, इसका कोई सोल्यूशन ही नहीं है. ओके, इसका कोई सोल्यूशन ही नहीं, बिकॉज वी डोंट हैव अ लॉ. The thing is that all of us have satellites that monitor other states. Okay, if I can be politically correct, India also has satellites that monitor some states. Okay, India also has satellites that collect information from our enemy bordering areas. China also has satellites that collect information from India. Okay, but the thing is that this is how it functions. And with international law, एक debate है ना कि is it actually law? Okay, वैसे ही आप देखते हो कि space law के time पे it is actually politics, national security, etc., that supersedes regulations. Okay, so it remains a gray area. We don't have legislations. Okay, there's a question by Sharath who has asked, is there any other treaty of sovereignty on other celestial bodies like Moon, Mars, etc.? Okay, Sharath, अगर आप देखोगे, there is one more legislation called as laws of seas. Okay, आपने सुना होगा United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. उसमें एक जोन है कॉल्ड एज हाई सीज. ओके, तो आप देखते हो कि जब यूएन जब आउटर स्पेस ट्रीटी बना रहा था, वही समय पे यूएन लॉ ऑफ सीज भी बना रहा था. ओके, एंड ड्राफ्टिंग ऑफ बोथ दीज थिंग्स वर हैपनिंग साइमल्टेनियसली. And since both these legislations were drafted during the same period, you will actually see that outer space treaty और law of seas के बहुत सारे principles same हैं. Okay, like common heritage of mankind, it is open for all, etc. etc. और जैसे आप देखते हो ना, high seas में कोई sovereignty नहीं है, वैसे ही space में भी sovereignty नहीं है. Okay, but you actually see that ये दोनों कानून साथ में बनाया, जिस वजह से आप देखते हो कि there are similarities. Okay, now in space law there is no law that talks about sovereignty. Okay, it is open for all the states. Okay, और space law का foundation ही है freedom के लिए, like high seas. Okay, so Shivam has asked, is it legal to use satellites to spy on people? Shivam, the answer is yes and no. Okay. Why am I saying this? Because it is not prohibited. Because we don't have a law that prohibits it. Now, the biggest question, Shivam, that you have to ask is that if it is not prohibited, does it mean that it is allowed? Okay, think about it, Shivam. Okay. If it is not prohibited, does it mean that it is allowed? Okay. If you think that कोई एक ऐसा चीज है जहां पर लॉ साइलेंट है, जो लॉ ने कोई प्रोहिबिट नहीं किया है, क्या इसका मतलब ये है कि वो सही है? Okay. And according to international law, there is a very interesting case called SS Lotus case. Okay. और SS Lotus case आप पढ़ोगे, according to jurisprudence of SS Lotus case, what is not prohibited is allowed. बट आप सोचिएगा ना कि ये सैटेलाइट स्पाइंग इशू जो है वो 1980s के बाद आया. इसका मतलब ये है कि कानून ने उस चीज को रेगुलेट करने के लिए लॉ बनाया नहीं है. क्या हमें लॉ चाहिए? हाँ, बट क्या स्टेट ने लॉ बनाया है? नहीं. एंड जस्ट बिकॉज लॉ ने स्टेट ने लॉ नहीं बनाया, क्या इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि ये चीज सही है? ओके, सो दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई आई एम सेइंग दैट द आंसर इज यस एंड नो. बिकॉज इज इट लीगल? सिंस इट इज नॉट प्रोहिबिटेड, वी कैन आर्ग्यू इट इज राइट. But is it actually right? Okay. What about privacy issues? What about sovereignty issues? We actually don't know. Okay. Okay. Google has asked, what if a private company launches spacecraft and it got crashed in some other countries? Then whom will be the liability for damages? Okay. So, Google, the answer is on the state. Okay. The answer is on the state. और मैंने कहा ना कि it is very similar to law of seas. अगर आप देखोगे, in United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, there is something called as deep sea mining. Okay, मतलब high seas में जाके आप mine करते हो. Okay, to extract petrol, minerals, cobalt, etc. Now, in deep sea mining, mining is done by a private party. There are private US companies that do mining. But whenever something goes wrong, responsibility lies on the state. Very similar to outer space. Private company can do send satellites, etc., but liability will be on the state that where it is registered. तो अगर SpaceX ने कुछ गड़बड़ कर दिया, liability will come on United States. Okay, so think about it. Any private company doing it, but liability on the state. Okay, that is the reason why all of these private companies are licensed and registered by the state itself. Okay, तो आप देखोगे युगल, जैसे आपने लाइबिलिटी के बारे में जिक्र किया, देयर इज आल्सो अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ इंश्योरेंस रिगार्डिंग टू आउटर स्पेस. ओके, तो आप देखते हो कि lot of things are happening with regard to insurances for outer space innovation. Okay, that is also a very good area that you can explore. Okay, one more question by Karthik. As SpaceX has planned to send some person to space, so sir, are there any legal framework for place for commercial activity? Okay. तो कार्तिक, एक्चुअली आप देखोगे, जैसे आपने जिक्र किया ना SpaceX के बारे में, there is no international law, but there are domestic laws. Okay, so you actually see that there are domestic laws that regulate how to regulate people you are sending to outer space. कार्तिक, अगर मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल दूं, ओके, मैंने कहा ना कि now humans are thinking of sending humans to other planets. For example, SpaceX ने ये सोचा है कि हम मार्स में humans को भेजेंगे. There is a program by NASA on reaching to a planet. Okay, wherein NASA को ये पता है कि अगर वो planet है जहां पर वो अगर आप गए तो वो planet हमारे लिए habitable है. मतलब the ecosystem in that planet is very similar to Earth. But the problem is that यहाँ से आप मून में जा सकते हो शायद within a span of 6-7 months. You can go to Mars within a span of 1 year. But ये जो planet है जहाँ पर आपको जाना है, वो जो journey का period है around 100 years. Okay, humans want to send, NASA wants to send humans to a planet, but the span of this journey is 100 years. Now the question is that what to do? NASA's solution is that we will send families. Okay, think about it. आज का generation जा रहा है to this outer space, और ये journey में they will procreate. Their children will then procreate, and the next generation to that next generation will reach out to that planet. Okay, can you actually believe this is something that NASA is actually planning to do? That they are planning to send families who will procreate in this journey, and the next generation will reach the planet. Okay, now they have domestic laws to regulate it. Okay, and now all spacefaring nations will have domestic laws, and it is actually a domain of domestic laws. Okay, so we don't have international law, but we have domestic law to regulate it. Akansha has asked a question that could you explain the fundamental principle of space law and its historical development? Akansha, that's what I think I broadly covered in the talk, the principle of freedom and the 5 UN treaties. There's a question by Asta with companies like Virgin Galactic and SpaceX looking to take space tourists to space. What are the legal rights and responsibilities? So, Asta, I think it is just like what happened in Titanic. Okay, जैसे टाइटैनिक में एक लिंक उन्होंने एक शिप भेजा था और देयर वर टूरिस्ट पीपल सफर्ड अ डैमेज पीपल डाइड सोचो कि उस टाइटैनिक में क्या लीगल इश्यूज हुआ होगा देयर वाज लीगल इश्यूज रिगार्डिंग रिस्पांसिबिलिटी ओके देयर वर लीगल इश्यूज रिगार्डिंग डैमेज टू द शिप देयर वाज damages to the people इंश्योरेंस ये सारी की सारी चीजें वो टाइटैनिक के बदले रिप्लेस कर दो कोई स्पेस शिप से all the things that will happen, all the rights that are there in a ship, okay, all the responsibilities that a company has to take is same. Okay, replace a spacecraft with a ship and think about Titanic. जो भी legal issues हुए थे वो सारे के सारे इसमें भी होंगे. Okay, and responsibility will be on the state. Okay, and but आप देखते हो कि स्टेट भी क्या करेगा ये कंपनी को प्रेशराइज करेगा उनसे पैसा रीप करेगा. Okay, so normal legal issues. Okay, I think Karthik, there's one more question. I think that's the last. How does space law address issues of liability? वही है मैंने जो मैंने कह दिया. We have 5 UN treaties and all of these things. Okay. I think I have answered majority of questions.
Thank you, sir, for answering
Yes.
the queries of our young learners. Now I request my colleague, Mrs. Pratishtha Mishra, to propose the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you find Mr. Adithya Variath lecture on Introduction to Space Law as insightful and engaging as I did. Mr. Variath, on behalf of all the participants, I extend our sincerest gratitude for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. Your comprehensive overview of space law, including its principles, treaties, and current developments, has provided us with a deeper understanding of this complex and fascinating field. Your passion for space law was evident in your presentation, and your ability to break down the complex concepts into digestible information was indeed truly commendable. We are grateful for your time, dedication, and willingness to share your insight with us. It is with the immense gratitude that I extend my thanks to each one of you for gracing our guest lecture with your esteemed presence. I would like to begin by expressing our heartfelt appreciation also to our respected Vice Chancellor, Dr. KRSS Sambasiva Rao, for his unwavering support and guidance, which have been instrumental in the success of the event. A special word of thanks to our Pro Vice Chancellor, Ma'am Dr. Vinita Korsaluja, for her continuous encouragement and dedication to academic excellence, which motivates us all. I would like to extend a sincere gratitude to our head of the department, Dr. Neeraj Prakash Rai, sir, for his visionary leadership and steadfast support throughout the planning process, and whose guidance and support have been invaluable throughout this event. I also want to express my biggest gratitude and thank you to my co-convener, Dr. Pooja Agarwal, for her immense support and guidance throughout the event. I also wanted to end the session and thanks Jenny Moore for her constant help. In closing, let us once again express our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Adithya Variath for his excellent lecture and to all the participants for this involvement. Thank you so much, Adithya.
Thank you, Pratishtha.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
before I
Pratishtha.
end, yes.
Thank you,
Before I
Aditya
end, I
sir.
Thank you, sir. I just want to request all the participants to actually, think about space law as a area where you can actually go and practice. There are a lot of firms who actually deal with these, sectors. You can be the first ones to take benefit. And after 10, 15 years, I'm very much sure that all of you will be potential millionaires once you enter into this domain. Okay. Thank you so much, Pratishtha. Thank you so much, Neeraj sir, Pooja ma'am. Thank you for thinking of me. I hope I can come and visit your campus very soon and talk to students directly. Yes.
Definitely.
Okay. And
Thank you so
happy Mahashivratri to all of you. Thank you so much.
Happy Mahashivratri, Aditya. Thank you
Same
so
to you.
much.
Same to you.
Thank you, sir. You can end the session, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone.